Hey guys, good morning. Welcome to this week's Get Unhooked for Families coaching call. I'm extremely excited to have my brother Cory with me, next to me, and my sister Melissa is going to also join. They are in town for a family event. My nephew Henry is leaving for Brazil for a couple of years to serve for our church. And so we're all gathering in Idaho for a little send-off party, and we're blessed to have a siblings perspective today. And so, as usual, I have Jennifer Chase joining today, our co-host, my co-host on this weekly coaching call. And she always adds so much depth and perspective that I lack. And so I hope between the four of us, between Jennifer, myself, my brother Cory, and my sister Melissa, you guys will be given a lot of meat. And I hope that we will have some questions that you could put in the chat so that we can address them, and maybe address them specifically, you know, from a sister's perspective or from a brother's perspective. But to open up, I felt like it's important to identify that as siblings, there's a process that happens in order to get the family system healthy again. And it doesn't necessarily stand contingent upon sobriety. And I think that's important, because a lot of times when we make sobriety the goal and the focus, then that dismisses and discounts and disregards the process of every family member that they go through in terms of not only healing wounds and past trauma or past manipulation or past deceit, but also the process of building trust through actions, not words. And that takes time. And so just to tee it up, I will share that both my siblings, well, all three of my siblings, my brother Jamie right now is I believe at work, so he's not joining us today. But I think the benefit and the safety of them living outside of the area that I was in during my addiction, for a large part of my addiction, was a physical boundary, a geographical boundary that just happened to be there. And so they were pursuing their various graduate degrees, supporting their spouses in that process as well. And so they lived all over the country during the thick and the dark seasons of my addiction. However, there were sprinklings throughout that time that gave me hope, although they probably felt rather powerless in how to help me, especially being so far away. And I will just validate some of the guilt that they've shared of feeling like they were too far away to actually help me. But I look at it differently. I'm like, it's a good thing you were far away, because I think I would have bulldozed you and and taken everything from you and destroyed our relationships. And so, my parents weren't in that camp. They were right in the path of my destruction, and so was my ex-wife. So was my a lot of my friends and my employers, and so. But that's not the only season we're going to talk about. We're going to also talk about the process of, like, there were times where I was having these moments of pause and review in my contemplation stage of change. One isolated example is when I was in jail. So when I was incarcerated in the height of my addiction, I had a season where I was like, okay, I'm going to change, because all the external consequences were evoking some internal motivation. And although I was in the contemplation stage of change, generally I was, on a daily basis, I was moving into preparation, and then I'd revert back to pre-contemplation, the whole vacillation. But I also remember receiving letters from my sister, Melissa. And if you haven't read the families sections in the back of Unhooked, my sister wrote a beautiful section back there of what her experience was like. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And then I read those letters in jail, and those were important seeds that were being planted. I also remember an intervention that my little brother and my older brother and my sister were on, and they reached out to me, and those seeds made an impact, although they didn't reap the results that they hoped for that day. It still mattered, but where their bigger impact was allowing me the natural consequences of my actions and not rescuing me or bailing me out, sending me money, all those kinds of things. They were very respectful of the process, whether that was intentional or unintentional. It was what I needed. And so I'm grateful for a higher power that was kind of guiding them behind the scenes. And what I can also share is that once I did get into sobriety and begin this process with a change of heart, that's where their support, I think, made the most impact for good. That's when the impact of building a new relationship upon a new foundation, because I was ready. Number one, I was there. And then number two is they were willing to work on that and invest in that. And today I can honestly say that my siblings and my parents are by far my best friends on the planet. Of course, my wife and kids, it goes without to say, but I cherish our relationships in a very real, general and genuine sense. And that's because of the relationships that we've invested in. And that's not because of me, that's because of their intention to create time and space for conversations with open-ended questions and validating my struggle and me validating their struggle and so on and so forth. So in effort to tee this up appropriate, I would also love to toss to Jennifer. And Jennifer, any thoughts come to you as we kind of go down this path of a sibling's perspective? Any words of wisdom? What's on your mind? And you're on mute. There you go.
First of all, I want to just welcome your sister and your brother. It's very exciting to have you guys here today. I look at my story of addiction, and I think I've been blessed with so many areas of impact, whether it's my own disease, whether it's, being a child of an alcoholic, whether it's having a child that's an addict. But one thing I don't have is the perspective of a sibling. And so I think, like so many people here today, I'm just interested and excited to hear their perspective and their experiences as walking through this time in your life with you and how they impacted in a healthy way. I think that's the story that I'm continuously interested in, is how do we continue to impact our addicted loved one in a way. Something that's been on my mind a lot lately is I've really been visualizing my own recovery and my son's recovery, and visualizing the long-term game. And when I have difficult decisions in the moment, what decisions are going to ultimately help in providing that long-term visualization that I'm doing. And so in listening to your brother and sister today, I'm really excited to see how the decisions and choices that they made during the time of your addiction, how did that impact the long game? And you spoke to it a little bit earlier, but I really am excited to hear the meat of that. So it's really exciting for me to say I don't necessarily have a perspective of a sibling. So I'm excited to hear them today.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm sure your daughter would have some really cool insights at some point as well on this same topic. So let's consider maybe that option down the road.
Agreed.
I know my sister is en route to my house, and she's in her vehicle, and as I clearly my brother Cory is here right now. So what I will do is I'll toss to Cory first, and then I'll come to Melissa, and maybe you could just give us your thoughts, like what's coming to you as we start this conversation, and let it go wherever it goes. You know, we've got people on here that are parents of addicted loved ones. We probably have some siblings on here as well. There will be people from all walks watching this on our Brick House Recovery TV channel. So in speaking to them, you know, why don't you share a few things, and you can step up closer to the
well, it's an honor to be here. As Jason mentioned, to be in the home of my brother, who I love dearly, is just, it's a treat. We live, you know, several states away from each other, so it's just great to be here and to be a participant of this. It's an honor. So for all of you that are on this, you know, we're part of the same family. This is an addiction family, recovery family, I should say, and it's just an honor. So, you know, Jen, you mentioned the impact. You know, what things were potentially of impact. I don't know. I would say, you know, Jason mentioned we were geographically separated. You know, there's a brotherly love with my brother and I, and that's something that stems from our upbringing together, being about a year and a half apart in age. You know, being his shadow his whole life, trying to follow his path and be as cool as he was, and hang out with the friends that he had. It was, you know, we had an upbringing of being very close. We were best frenemies is probably the best term. Best friends, and then really the worst enemies. He was, you know, as we both were going through our upbringing, there were definitely times that we would get a little bit aggressive with each other. So, but that relationship definitely started. So, you know, it started early on, and there was always a love through the dark years. There was a disconnect between he and I, and I think as he's probably explained it, it's maybe part of the process. He kept some things at kind of an arm's length because of what he was going through, to kind of, maybe there was a protection mechanism. I don't know if this happened with all of the siblings, but with me, his only younger brother, being the youngest, there was a protection, a natural protection that I think he had with me, where he didn't want me to know about things. He didn't want to pull me into it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if these are all accurate. I'm just from my perspective going through it. And so there was always a love through it, even though I know he was going through some rough times. Being, you know, I was going through dental and orthodontic school in Kentucky, so we were a long ways away. But just by nature, geographically, we weren't real close during these years. And then, you know, going through the recovery, as Jen asked me, what might have been the impact for me. I never lost my love for him, and I think, I don't know if I showed it. I tend to, when I don't know what to do, I tend to not do anything, and that's a definite fault or flaw of mine. If I don't know what to do or how to respond, I tend to recoil and recluse a little bit. So maybe it's a little bit of introversion I have or what, but I tend to not act. And I don't remember any of my actions with him directly. I don't know if I reached out periodically. I know that we definitely had some contact, but I just don't recall what they were. I don't remember specific things I did. So you could probably comment on those, Jason, if you remember them. But all that I know is in my heart, the feelings I had through all of that were continual love and acceptance. And I remember the day that I flew out to attend his graduation from his program, and I would say that was probably the most impactful experience that I went through personally to understand what he was going through, because up to that point I didn't understand it. I knew that it was a dark world, and there were things that were I assumed were extremely difficult for him, but I hadn't personally gone through it, so I couldn't really empathize with his situation. But when I got to be with the graduating class and some of the others that were going through this recovery program, there was an extreme expression of love and belonging, just to be in the presence of these great men and women that were going through this program. Actually, I think it was just a men's only program. But anyway, this one was full of these men that were bearing their souls and their hearts, and recognizing, relying on their higher power and their Savior to go through this. And they were all at different levels of their recovery. And that was an impactful thing for me, as I was able to participate in that, witness that, hear them speak, and share my personal love for them and encouragement through this. So maybe the answer to your question, Jen, is maybe he felt that love. I hope he did, but it was there. It was real. I felt it. I hope I expressed it, but if you ask Jason, I would probably feel confident saying that he always knew that I loved him. And so that love, for whatever it did, hopefully it made some difference in his, continued strength to get through the crap that he was going through. So hopefully that answers it a little bit.
Yeah, you want to ask Mel.
All right, Mel, are you in a place that you want to jump in?
Yeah, we just pulled up, so it's probably just better to stay here in my car. But yeah, in a way, I kind of feel like we had a little bit of a luxury in being separated from the mess, so to speak. My family would come up north and we'd get to see Jason, but it was always sort of on short term, just like little intervals of time that we'd be together, and then we could go back home. And I was always a little bit nervous when I was with Jason, because I could see, I mean, there was an awkward feeling there, and I could see that there were things he was hiding, and there were things that weren't good, and I was always nervous that he was going to ask if he could come down to Tucson and stay with us, or come down and live there. And I was always nervous because I knew that I couldn't say no to him very easily. And I just didn't know like how to really have a good boundary. So in a way, the distance made it a natural boundary, and I think that helped our relationship a lot, because we didn't have to really participate in a lot of the drama, so to speak. But I learned mostly about how things were going through my mom, and we were really close throughout all of it, and talked a lot on the phone. And I don't know, I just always knew that Jason could turn it around. I think in the beginning I was really naive in how easy it would be to turn it around. I remember when Jason was separated from his first wife, and that was really hard on me because I really cared for his first wife, and I knew that she really I knew that neither of them really wanted that divorce or separation. And I remember him talking one time about how, you know, one time he asked me, do you think she still would want to stay married? Do you think that she still loves me? And I was just like, yeah, like I know that she does. Just quit doing what you're doing. Just quit it. And in my mind, I thought, if he just did this, this, and this, he could turn everything around, and everything, he could save everything. He could save his marriage, he could save this, he could save that. And I just didn't have any appreciation for how impossible that would be. And so I was really sort of in a complete alternate reality with my expectations of what he could do. And I think what helped me a lot was I started reading and learning more about addiction. I actually read the AA book, and I read a couple of other books, and I started going to that family group class that summer that Jason started at in his treatment program. I just started learning more about addiction, and I just gained a different understanding of how much more it is, and how much more it's not just something you can just make a decision to stop and then you can stop. And that helped me a ton because it took a lot of the anger away from me and feeling just the judgment, because I could see that I didn't have a real grasp of what his life was like and his reality. And I remember a conversation I had with him once up at Mom's. This was when he was in recovery, and he shared with me that he felt like he was at the bottom of a deep, deep hole, like a deep well. And he was looking up at people that were up on level ground out of the hole, and they were saying, just come on, just come up here, just come join us, just quit. And he felt like it would be easier to just end his life, because he couldn't even figure out how to get himself out of the hole. And somehow that imagery really hit home to me, that he needed help, and how disconnected we can be and not understanding how hard it is to I think, especially in church, you learn so much about choice, making good choices. Just start making good choices. It seems so easy, right? But when you realize with addiction, maybe in the beginning it's a choice, but not too long after that, it's not a choice anymore. And nobody would choose to lose everything in their life. You're so literally enslaved without any choices. And so I think that's what helped me was just learning more about addiction. And I wish I could go back to, if I could go back and talk to myself back at that time. There were time I felt a lot of guilt that I couldn't help Jason more. And I felt guilty that I sort of was grateful for that space that we had during that time. and I felt guilty that I couldn't do more and that I couldn't just take him into my house and just fix everything. And but I wish I could go back and tell myself then not to feel guilty about that, and that it's okay for trust and the building of a relationship to happen later. That it's going to happen when it's right time to happen, and when he's ready and when I'm ready, and that it doesn't have to be, everything's not always going to be, you know, it's all right that it's not a completely healthy relationship at that time, and that things just take time. There's nothing wrong with it. Just taking its course the way it needs to go. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but I wish that I could tell myself not to feel so guilty that our relationship wasn't good at that time, that it was all right, and that that was something that we could build on in the future when it was the right time. But all wasn't lost. I wasn't being a terrible, crappy sister because of what was happening. So,
Hey, Melly, what was it that helped you build the trust back in me? Like, what was, do you have a memory of like when you were like, I trust him again? What was that journey like? Because I think everybody in here is wondering, like, how far do you trust just based on their words?
well, I think that trust comes slowly. And I think sometimes it takes a step back. It's not always linear. And what helped me was talking to you and just hearing you be really transparent with where you were at. And when you were willing to share, it made me feel like you were telling us the truth, because you can just tell when someone's being authentic and when someone's being transparent. And that helped me build trust in what you were saying. But I think that trusting people just takes time. You have to actually see them getting stronger through their own actions. And you want to trust someone, you want to give them everything because you want to fix the relationship, but yet doing that too soon is not healthy too. So I mean, I'm not an expert on any of this, but it seems like it's okay for it to just take time. It's okay to just only give them as much trust as you feel comfortable risking. And I think that can sometimes help your relationship too, so that you're not always getting taken advantage of early on. But I think when you see your loved one doing the steps and making it work for them, and letting them just develop those skills on their own, I think that's when you can start. That's when it just naturally happens, where you start trusting them. But there's always, I still think there's always times where something happens and you're like, oh, is this a red flag? Is this a red flag? And I think that sometimes trust takes a jump back, and you get scared and you get flipped back into the fear mode. But I think it just takes time.
How about you? On trust?
Well, like Melissa said earlier, I think there was maybe all of us in the family started to listen to some of the books and learn about addiction. And I also did that. I work oftentimes in remote places and have a lot of drive time. So I would listen to the big book, and there was some interviews I think Mom sent from, I don't remember which interviews they were, but there were just some audio versions of it that I could listen to, and really helpful. But I learned for the first time what the 12-step program was, and I remember I would get calls from Jason just randomly, again, still living away from him, just randomly calling to apologize about something. And I always, he says, hey, I need to make amends for something that he finally remembered, or it came to his mind of something he may have done way back when that I had long forgotten probably. And he would call and say, hey, I just want to apologize for that, to make amends. And so when he was working the steps, not knowing much about them and learning myself what they were, it turned from for me, it was never that I was at a place and he was trying to come to this place through his recovery. It kind of flipped to be where, like, well, these steps that he was working and going through this process of recovery and making amends, it helped me recognize where I was personally and how much I needed to do, just in it that we all need to do in our daily lives to improve ourselves and connect to our higher power. And I almost became jealous of your honesty with your character flaws and your recovery. And it was something that actually, it turned into a motivation for me personally. And so that, your recovery was a blessing for my life personally, because it helped me be more honest about my character defects and flaws and things that I can improve on and things I can make amends for, and start working, not formally maybe the steps, but learning from you how to do that and how to become a better person. And so so that trust was, it kind of came quick, because I saw how good this program that he was going through, and this recovery, the whole thing of recovery, it was just such a good, healthy thing that I immediately saw it as an example of how I can improve my life as well. And so I feel like the trust came back pretty quick. He had never done anything to me to severely break my friendship and love and trust with him. So I can honestly say it wasn't a hard thing to recover that trust, because I don't feel like it was necessarily broken. So hopefully that helps.
On that note, just another question for both of you. There came a point where you were willing to share this about our family, and that gap can be hard for people who are in it, because there's so much stigma around it. There's so much isolation around it and secrecy around it, and you just don't know who to share it with and if it would do any good. And so a lot of people will just keep these family secrets in a vault, and and some may never share it. And what was it for you to where now you come on a coaching call and you're talking about your innermost feelings with strangers that are here? How did you make that leap? Because that's a pretty big one.
I don't remember what it was that changed my comfort in talking about what you were going through, but I do remember specifically through the different communities that I've lived in over the last 15 years. I brought up what you were going through at select times. I don't know, through prompting or through just finding a common ground with somebody that may have said something. But I remember there were times that I opened up and shared a few things, and I immediately found friendship with a lot of people that I learned about them, either their personal experience or their own siblings or their own parents or somebody they know that have been going through basically the same thing. And that kind of created a bond. And so once I started doing that, and certain people would it would prick their ears and they would want to engage in more of a conversation. I actually enjoyed, you can connect with people at a different level when you start talking about recovery. And so for me, that was cool to connect with people that maybe I didn't have anything else in common with. And so the fact that we had that ability to connect with certain key individuals there's one guy in particular that I don't ever see hardly ever, maybe at church only, and he's in another stake, and so it's maybe once every 2 years I see him. He's one that we don't have a deep relationship with, but we spoke about recovery one time, and every time I see him, we give about a 2-minute bear hug every time we see each other. And it's just one of those things that you just have a kinship to connecting with Christ at that level and watching somebody go through that. So anyway, that's just one example of many that have helped me build relationships with people.
That's awesome. How about you, Melissa?
You know, I think initially I was really nervous to talk about it with my friends. I guess I was just so afraid of the judgment, and I felt so protective of you. I didn't want people to think badly of you, or I feel like times have changed a lot since then too. I feel like um, I just remember 10 years ago hearing so much more judgment with people, and I don't know if it was mostly people within our church or if it was people within our communities, but I just think there was a lot more misunderstanding about addiction, and there was a lot more of a stigma that people were just choosing to ruin their families. And you know, I think people understand better now. At least we've come a long way. I know that there's still a lot of room to go, but for me personally, I kept it pretty close to my chest and really only talked about it with my mom and my husband. And that was actually really hard to carry because, um, you know, I had a lot of people and friends, and, you know, was very involved in communities. And I felt like there were so many times where I was with people that just, I just didn't feel comfortable sharing it. And it was kind of a heavy thing to carry by myself. I don't think I started feeling comfortable until Jason, until you were active in your own recovery and you were sharing. And I feel like I feel like you let out for me. I listened to you do, I can't remember if it was you led a group, it might have been an AA meeting or some type of a meeting for other uh, addicts, and I went and listened. And also going to that family group class and listening to other people share, that was very new for me, to sit in a group of people and listening to people bare their souls to other people that are, you know, for many of them strangers. It was such a like beautiful sacred space that I almost like walked away from it and like craved that more because it was so sacred. And I would feel the spirit in those rooms so strong. It made me want to connect on a different, deeper, more authentic way with people. And I feel like that's what gave me courage to start opening up more and sharing about what our family was going through and what we were learning and the mistakes we'd made and what we were trying to do better. And man, I feel like it was such a blessing in my life because it helped me learn how to connect with people in a more real way, which to me is now like the only way I really want to connect with people now. I don't have time or energy to just have a lot of superficial relationships in my life. So all in all, it was a huge blessing for me personally to learn how to connect with people that way. And so I'm grateful to you, Jason, for bringing that to all of us.
Thank you. I love your heart, Melissa. Thank you for your vulnerability. And I just love the perspective that you offered, how And it's almost like they're talking about someone else, by the way, just for those of you guys wondering, like, how's Jason feeling about it? I feel like they're talking about someone else, like my alter ego. And it's just really cool to be in this place where I'm just like, it's so awesome to hear their perspective. I think the last question I have before we open it up with the few minutes that we have left is, how did you help mom and dad who were in the thick, who were taking the bullets and the shrapnel, and they were in the actual war zone? And when they would come to you, or not come to you, what ways did you find to be not helpful or helpful in supporting them through that? You want to start, Cory, or do you want to start, Melissa?
Mel, if you got a thought, I may keep thinking about that one.
I think with me, I was very much in mom's ear all the time, because we were talking on the phone probably 3 times a day, and I was just home with 3 little preschoolers, so it was easy for me to have like nothing much else going on, but just what's the next saga, what's going on now, what did he say when this happened? And I felt like I was constantly getting updates from her, and I don't know if that was necessarily helpful. I did realize there were times that I would ask mom, well, what did he say about this? Well, did you say this? Well, did you say this? And she would just say, well, no, I'm trying to just, I felt like she sometimes got defensive with me about, I was just trying to extract information and not necessarily giving good advice on how involved she should be or not be. And of course, I didn't know anything at the time. I was just so consumed with the curiosity and how are we going to fix this. So I don't know if necessarily me being there like that was very helpful, but I do think the things that helped the most were when I just listened, like really just listened, didn't interrogate, didn't advise, didn't say you should have, or why didn't we do this, but when I just listened and just showed support. And I reminded my mom that she was such a good mom. I just told her, because I know that she was feeling a lot of responsibility for what was happening. And it's true, you're only as happy as what is the phrase, you're sad as your saddest child, or you're only as happy as your saddest child. And I think that she really felt that on a minute by minute basis. And so I tried to just be in that space of just like listening to her. That was a lot more helpful. And I recognized with mom and dad that they were going through things differently. There were times when mom just felt really sad and dad was more in an angry mode and he wanted to vent. And I noticed, like, mom would say, it kind of hurts my feelings when I hear him vent about Jason. And then there were other times where dad wanted to help and be more of a, I don't know, he was in a more of a different mode, and she would be more angry. And so they weren't necessarily always on the same page with each other, but they were really good at supporting one another in whatever space the other one needed to be in at that time, because they were grieving. And so they would vacillate between different levels of and different stages of grief. And so they held space for each other to just be in that space and not not have resentment from the other, that they were not at the same place that the other was at that time. So I don't know. I'm not sure if I was that helpful, but I do know that it is good to have someone that will just listen and support you and love you, regardless of whether the addict is in a good place at that time or a bad place at that time.
I love how you talked about that bridge from interrogation to just listening. You know, in the book, we there's a section about drawing out ideas versus imposing ideas, and honoring individuality versus authority. And I think that interrogation comes across as authority. It comes across as imposing ideas versus allowing them to just go through that process, and you just listening as they come to their own ideas, and you help draw out those ideas through listening and validating and supporting their individual process and individuality rather than being the authority over what they should and shouldn't feel. How about you, Cory?
I don't have anything to add really there, Mel. I mean, this is the sister that can recite every line of our favorite movie, and her memory is a lot better than mine. But you know, there's things I wish that I had done more, for sure. I think, you know, being more of a supportive person to my parents going through this, versus, like Melissa said, just getting information. I think you know, we just, our heads were not in the right place probably through this, and there's a lot that in hindsight we would probably do differently. But yeah, I would say for anybody in this position, you know, what I wish I had done more is definitely just provide that support and just try to be the pillar of light and draw everybody back to the bigger purpose and bigger vision and perspective of this life, and helping people see the hope that's there, even in the darkest times. And we talk about trust, and here I am with my brother who, you know, there other than my wife, there's nobody on this planet that I share more with than my brother. So that just, you know, talk about hope, you know, from where you've come to where we are now standing in this room and our relationship today. There's hope out there for everybody. So not that you weren't anything special, but it's pretty cool to be here. So.
I think they are frozen in that moment, which is pretty cool, actually. Oh, there they are.
Uh-oh. Did we lose it?
Yeah, but it was perfect because it froze right in the moment of that embrace in that moment. So it was pretty cool, really.
Good. You didn't miss anything then. Hang on one sec.
For those of you that don't know, Jason has a real struggle at home with his internet. So the fact that we just lost them once today is actually, I think he probably is switching his internet. Really quickly before he jumps on, something just keeps coming to me. Some of you that are regulars on this call have heard me talk about the dynamic of addiction, especially with families. And I'm a very visual person. And so I always think about my family from the beginning of, you know, when I was a small child. My family did the dance of a waltz. And, you know, there were 5 of us or 10 of us, or, you know, depending on the extension of our family, we were on the dance floor waltzing. The problem was, in my life, waltzing never felt comfortable. I didn't like the dance of waltzing. And so I was that one person in my family that was like, no, we're going to do this different. And so there was a lot of tension, if you will, on that dance floor. And when I got sober, I realized that the dance that I really loved was a tango. And so on this dance floor of my family, everybody's waltzing because that's what they did. And I was tangoing. And you can imagine what was happening on that dance floor. as I'm listening to your guys' stories and experiences in your family, I want to honor it, because so often I sit with families that are like, we waltz and that's what we do. And that addict and that person needs to figure out how we dance as a family. And what I just want to honor about your experience is that, Jason may have tangoed and you may have waltzed, but at some point you learned how to do a dance together. It was not a tango, and it was not a waltz. It was something that you guys learned to do that was that felt good and comfortable for all of you. And that is not always the case. So often an addict has to go to a different dance floor. So often an addict has to remove themselves from that family unit because they can no longer waltz. And so more than anything today, I just want to honor your experience and your story and your courage and your vulnerability. Because I know as a mom of an addict, there's so much to learn from your experience. So I just want to say thank you.
Hey, thank you, Jen. I second that. Thank you, Melissa and Cory. The most help that you gave me, especially in those early first 3 years of sobriety, was you just showed up. The showing up, the hugs. I don't remember a lot of the words or the conversations because my brain was healing, but I don't remember being interrogated. I don't remember being shamed. I don't remember being forced. What I remember is, like, I'll never forget the decision I made to be baptized again in our church about 2 years into recovery. And not only did my whole family show up, but I'll never forget the embrace that we had when you sought me out, and we hugged for like 5 minutes, just bawling, and no words, it was just that deep connection. And those are the moments that I remember the most, that evoked that internal motivation to keep going. And then hearing about you guys reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was just like, it's so funny, but it's awesome. Like, I was encouraged and I was motivated to work my own recovery as I saw my parents and my siblings do it too. And when we'd get together, they would talk to me about recovery principles. We didn't stay in the weeds of the past and the pain. What we talked about was the light and the rebirth and the refreshed view on life, and we helped each other level up. That's I think the biggest help for me was you guys just showing up and not using resentments from the past or resentments for hurting mom and dad to make me pay more, because I had already hung myself on the cross. I had already beat myself up many times over, and I didn't need people to kick me while I was down. What I needed was that hug, and what I needed was to see your faces at my treatment graduation, and what I needed were those conversations that we would have at our family gatherings, even though most of the time the adults would have their conversation and I would go down with the kids and watch cartoons, because that's where I felt most comfortable in those family dynamics for the first many years. And they just allowed that. But I was the favorite uncle. Like, that was the best part about that whole thing. And I got a chance to brainwash them so that they know who their favorite uncle is. But I had to go through that process. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for doing this call. We are at time, but I did want to wrap up here, and then I'd like to stop the recording and then just open it up for any questions or comments from those that are attending live, and we can go for another 5 or 10 minutes. But those of you that are watching this on YouTube, thank you for supporting this, and Melissa and Cory, thank you for your roles in my life, and to my wife, and to Jessica, Cory's wife, and to Jameson, Melissa's husband, and Lori and Jamie, and all of my family members who have supported me and showed up. They brought their kids, and my son and his adoptive family would come, and they all showed up. Like, that's what was so big for me. And so any of you that are watching this, just know how much that means to me to this day, and still touches my heart. And I really try to show up for you guys as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful journey, and I'm grateful to be on this path as opposed to where we were. So anyway, love you guys. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we'll see you again next week. Okay.